Hello everybody, welcome back to the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition Town Hall. I'm Eric Galinkin. I am the community manager and other duties as assigned here. If you are not on our Slack, please be. If you have friends who are not on our Slack, make them join by hook or by crook, by force if necessary, invite them. And I will drop a link in the chat below. So a couple of housekeeping items at the top. Again, join the Slack. I just posted the link. We do also post about things on LinkedIn, on Twitter, so please follow us there. You doing social media engagement helps us reach more people, and reaching more people helps the community grow. The community growing, thank you for stealing my thunder, Nick. The community growing helps us get to where we are today, which is finally over 4,000 members. We are officially over 4,000 members in 24 of the 37 time zones on Earth, which is why I was even talking about time zones to begin with. If we could get those last 13 time zones, I don't know what they are yet, that would be amazing. So this week we are, as usual, going to have Emily give our threat overview. Oh, very nice MailChimp. We have a lot of branding on today's town hall. Mine is Monster, who I do not work for. I just enjoy their products. And we are joined by the esteemed Jen Miller-Osborn. Yes, the Galactic Federation. Not Jen Miller-Osborn, not of the Galactic Federation, of Palo Alto Networks, Unit 42, to talk about all kinds of fun and significantly less fun things that they are seeing. Other than that, next week, I expect to have a big announcement on the how you can help us side. We're working on making it easier for volunteers to vet unvetted indicators. So be on the lookout for more information about that next week. We are currently beta testing a Slack bot that will allow that to happen. And once that is available to the general public, I will, and by general public, I mean the 4,000 people in our Slack, I will mention that here. So without further ado, Emily, take it away.
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna...
Real quick, Emily, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
Make sure to remember that you can ask questions, whether it's in chat or Q&A, and we will get to them, because Emily will answer questions. She's historically done that. So
yes, that's true.
Make sure you ask questions if you have them.
Yeah, and Q&A is easier for us to manage, so try that. But yes, chat also works.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. All right, let me... Boom. Okay. So as Eric mentioned, I'm Emily, and I lead the threat advisory team here at the CTC, if you are new to this whole thing. So we had 2 releases this week. One of them was around stories relevant to COVID, and one of them was more focused on some of the research our group has done. So first I want to talk about a couple of the stories that we've covered that we thought were particularly relevant given just the threat landscape in general right now. So the first topic we'll hit on is one that we've covered really heavily here, and it's still in the rotation. So remote work vulnerabilities continue to be a big concern. So results from a couple of different vendor surveys we looked at have some pretty sobering stats. So a Kaspersky survey found that 50% of respondents' companies are allowing people to work from personal devices, while a CrowdStrike survey reported a similar stat of 60% of companies allowing people to use personal devices. So in the past, we've touched on things like, taking devices out from behind corporate firewalls and not having corporate network protections because now they're using home networks. And these stats are concerning for that reason, but also for the following. So for Kaspersky, they said 73% of their respondents reported that they haven't received or their companies haven't given additional security training since the beginning of the pandemic. And CrowdStrike puts that number at 50%. So this is huge in my opinion. I mean, security education and awareness and training is really one of the first lines of defense you have against things like scams and phishing and social engineering, which are quite honestly all too effective at times. And so to think that, companies maybe aren't doing something like this that really doesn't necessarily require, it doesn't have a big price tag like some different types of technologies might. Like there are lots of free resources available to help with this. In fact, we've published one you can find on our website under the advisories page. But yeah, I can't push that enough. Like that stat really surprised me and concerned me. So yeah, I would say if you're out there and you haven't even, maybe sent a reminder of like, hey, watch out for phishing emails. Here's what they sometimes look like, or here's how to report something like this to your organization. It might not be a bad idea to do that. So next up, healthcare research organizations are, they've never really left attackers' sites, but they're back in the spotlight again as a hot target. So the FBI and CISA recently issued a joint warning regarding attacks on these organizations from nation-state actors. And many of the recommendations that they make in regards to mitigating and protecting against these attacks are similar to what we often discuss here. If you've attended some of these town halls before or read our advisories, you know that one of the things that we tend to, maybe get a little soapboxy about is security hygiene, basic security protections. Like these will take you very far. But one interesting thing about this in particular, these types of attacks, is that press attention around an organization tends to lead to an increase in attacks. And that might not be surprising if you really think about it. I mean, at my organization, we talk about that a lot when we have things like, feature pushes or new marketing coming out. We talk about, anticipating being in the spotlight a little more. And it makes sense for these organizations that are really on the forefront of developing, COVID cures, vaccines, related types of technology. As they're being covered, they're also, very attractive targets. Like, can you think about like ransomwaring one of those organizations? Like that would just be remarkable and horrible, but probably pretty lucrative. So on the note of lucrative attacks, DDoS is back. It never really went away. I don't know why I said it's back. We haven't talked a ton about it here in the context of COVID because we've focused a whole lot on things like spam and phishing and other scams, along with ransomware, because that's proven to be really popular against healthcare organizations. But when we were reviewing some of the news that has come out in the last week or so, we noticed that multiple firms, so Cloudflare, Imperva, Europol, just to name a couple, have reported an uptick in DDoS attacks over the last few months. So in particular, Cloudflare reports an uptick in smaller, shorter attacks. So they reported that for Q1 of 2020, over 90% of what they saw were less than 10 gigabits per second. So, and that's not tiny, but it's still, or it's not huge rather, it's still enough to knock unprotected sites offline. And it can be just enough to get attackers to be able to extort a company to get the attack to stop. So, investing in protections around these types of things, like these types of tools are always a good idea if you don't have them, if you think your infrastructure is at risk, and it probably is in some way. It's not a bad idea to invest in some kind of DDoS protection technology. So now we'll skip over into some of the data trends that we've looked at over the last few weeks. So we continue to study COVID domains and traffic to these domains. The graph on the left, if you are newer to this and haven't attended one of these before, this is COVID-related domain registrations per day. And the graph on the right is traffic to COVID-related domains per day. And, overall, the registrations are down. They're trending downward. But Domain Tools makes a point of reporting that we're still seeing anywhere from 800 to 1,000 of these a day, which is still quite high. It's just, off of that peak that we saw around mid-March. And as far as traffic goes, it's on the decline, but it does seem to be holding fairly steady. Like it's not at peak levels, but it's still there. It's still happening. Similarly, looking at related terms, so you can see some of the terms in the legend on the top left. You know, disinfect, mask was a really big term that we saw in domains in early April. You can see those, again, still declining. So that's pretty interesting. Those registrations are still starting to taper off. And finally, one of the things that we looked at in a recent advisory was domain registrations against Google Trends data for coronavirus. So the graph on the top is US Google search trends against coronavirus domains per day. And the graph on the bottom is global Google Trends data for coronavirus versus domain registrations for coronavirus. And as you can see, there's a bit more of a discrepancy between once you get to April 2020, so around here, you can start to see there's a bit more of a discrepancy in the registrations versus the trends data on the global graph on the bottom. Whereas the one on the top for the US trends, it does seem to still be tracking a little bit more closely. We're following that. We're not entirely sure why. We think it could be, you know, lots of domains were registered in the US, so that could have something to do with it. But ultimately, a lot of things that we're seeing and that we've studied and we've seen peak in the last few weeks really are starting to kind of downshift a little bit. And so we're going to keep watching those and see what happens. We're not really sure what the next big thing might be, but it doesn't feel like it's far off because it seems like this is starting to taper a little bit. But we'll keep watching it and keep giving you updates every week. So yeah, with that, I will turn it back over to Eric.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. We had a lot of questions, including one about the construction.
Yes, sorry, I know that's really loud. But my dog was quiet, which is cool.
Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. That's how that song goes. So
I'll take what I can get. Yes, but yes, questions. Sorry.
No, we've addressed them all. So
Awesome.
If there are no other questions, then we can move on to.
And just to confirm one question before we do move on, everything that you just referenced here is in the advisories with the sources, correct?
Correct. Yeah. In fact, yeah, I would totally recommend going and checking those out.
Already linked it.
Awesome.
Just
Awesome.
want to make sure because that was the question and that was my answer. Just double checking. So
awesome.
please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, my apologies. I didn't ask that one because I knew you gave the right answer. So
well, now I know too, right? So
there we go. Without any other questions, then I will hand it over to Jen Miller-Osborn. Jen, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give an overview of all of the research and kind of things that Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 has been seeing during this entire COVID pandemic and how the attackers have been exploiting it. So I'm going to share my screen quick. Let's see if this will work. Okay, do you see slides?
we're good. We're good.
All right, cool. So I'll do a quick introduction for people that might not know me. My name is Jen Miller-Osborn. I am the Deputy Director of Threat Intelligence here at Unit 42. I've been with the company for about 6 years. I was actually the first person hired after Rick Howard brought Ryan Olson on. And I've been in the community for, it's really weird to say, but almost 20 years. And my focus for the majority of that has been on cyber attacks and tracking and defending against them. Unit 42, for those that might not be familiar with us, we are the threat intelligence component of Palo Alto Networks. We are the only part of the company that is not also in some way beholden to our products. What that means is we are tasked solely with doing research and sharing it. Obviously, we work very closely with all of our in-house teams to ensure we have protections for all of these things, but we are freed from that kind of software development lifecycle kind of pressure. So we can focus on, some more long-term research. Sometimes it takes a couple of months, and we can also pivot quickly when we find something that we really feel needs to go out fast. So is being weird. Okay. To get started, my overall message around all of this would have been, and still is, don't panic. The attackers did not get better overnight. No one woke up, the next morning with superpowers. If you did, I would love to talk to you, because I did not, and I'm kind of disappointed about that. So you're still facing the exact same attackers that you were facing before this. They're still using the same tools. They still have the same techniques. They didn't suddenly get access to this 0-day vault that they can now run around like crazy. They're the exact same people. They were, whatever the theme they were using before this, they're just using COVID now. They're using the same tools. They're using the same techniques and tactics. So from that perspective, when you're looking at a lot of these things, there are a lot of ways that you can be safe, because it really isn't anything new. What is new about this is that we're in a global pandemic, so attackers across the board are taking advantage of it. You typically see them leverage things more regional, but anything that's big in the news is always something that's going to be a lure. This is just a unique case where it's global, so they're taking advantage of that. A quick, just to go over the sources for all of this, we have published a total of 6 COVID themed blogs of varying types, talking about different types of attacks, and also some that focus more on cloud. So that is the sourcing for all of these. And if you're interested in any of them, I have a link to our website at the end, but it's just unit 42 at paloaltonetworks.com or .paloaltonetworks.com. Super, super, super long. So what we're seeing as a whole, seeing a lot of phishing and malware being distributed with these themes, which is exactly what you would expect. One of the things that was somewhat unique for this is there's a lot of apps that ended up going out relatively quickly, primarily targeting Android, that were also exploiting this coronavirus theme, promising to track cases near you, to report it to you, ways, in some cases, ways to let you know if you're infected. And all of these things are just stealing data and sending it back to attackers. We also saw massive upsurge in the registration and then exploitation of just fake supplies. And they're doing that for a variety of reasons, everything from financial, just stealing personal data. And then, unfortunately, and probably the worst of everything we've seen, is we've seen ransomware actually targeting hospitals and organizations that are working on research surrounding trying to find a cure. So those are the, yeah, I get you want to make money, but come on, a little bit too much. And I also wanted to highlight that really the biggest component about this is the cyber attackers exploiting people's anxiety and how their behaviors have now changed and things, and they're not doing the same patterns they did. So, working from home for a lot of people has been particularly challenging. They haven't done it before. None of your routines are in place. You have children at home. They're also supposed to be being schooled somehow at the same time you're working. So they're just taking advantage of that and people's anxiety around this to get them to kind of click or download without really pausing to think about it. So there are a lot of words on this slide, and we'll go over it slowly. So following with what Emily said for the registrations going down, we are also seeing that as well. It seems like the interest in it has somewhat, at least from the registration component, peaked, but given the number of domains that they registered and ones that are still parked and haven't actually been used, they've still got more than enough of them. So most interestingly, of the ones that we tracked between January and March, of that over 116,000, the 2,000 are malicious. And when I say that, that means that we actually detected malicious activity going on with those domains, with some sort of communication tied to a malware sample, anything like that. Those are definitively malicious. For the 40,000 high risk, those compose of domains where we couldn't make an automated call on whether or not they were malicious. They're newly registered, which makes them suspicious using those keywords, but we didn't have anything that necessarily said they were specifically delivering malware. They were more potential for coin mining, adware, and that kind of thing. One component I want to note, because I'll talk about it next, is one of the things that we use to also determine maliciousness and whether or not to mark a domain as high risk is whether or not they use bulletproof hosting. So that can be a really good sign that things might not be on the up and up. For the cloud component, we saw similar targeting. We didn't see the same volume, which makes sense. They're a little bit harder to register, and it's harder for the attackers there to stay safe, to stay hidden. But we definitely saw attackers abusing that. And a lot of times they do that because there's the perception that, you know, malware can't exist in the cloud still for some people. So that adds an air of legitimacy to those domains. So bulletproof ASNs. These are bad guys, essentially, as far as I'm concerned. They are the hosters of choice for anyone doing anything malicious. This is everything from cyber attackers to child porn, anything online that's bad. Bulletproof hosting is their go-to. And this is why. You can see they very rarely respond when and if law enforcement contact them. They just don't do it. And then they'll malign accept Bitcoin for payment issues for the same reason, so they can hide people. So this is one thing when you're looking, especially from an automated component to determine maliciousness, bulletproof hosting can be a definite sign that it might be doing, whoever registered that might have questionable motivations. These slides do not change easily. Oh, sorry, technical difficulties. Oh, of course that would happen right now.
This might be a good time for a question then while you figure it out if you want to multi.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this then, because one of the things about cybersecurity frameworks out there is that as we are tracking threats, the world, I don't care what the threat intel company is or the coalition, obviously hospitals have been a target, but has Unit 42 or Palo Alto looked at anything regarding the supply chains? That's been a big push, you know, in cybersecurity, is identification of supply chain risks, and especially when you've got a hospital that is requiring heavy resupply constantly.
To some extent, with this, we did. We worked a bit in collaboration with DHS and CISA. They actually provided out to a number of partners, basically kind of a list of organizations to keep an eye on, and, you know, types of things. Obviously, the fact that they're healthcare and things, we knew about that, but they did give us a bit more of a specific list. So if they were customers, we could kind of investigate that. We didn't see anything specific for supply chain issues, but that's also something that would be very difficult to see depending on our visibility, right? Because if it's someone further down, depending on how it would come through, that might be somewhat difficult.
Right. Well, I was thinking more of like identification of a customer of Palo Alto Networks, for example. So for example, if I'm supplying PPE as a manufacturer to a hospital and I am using your endpoint detection, your firewall, whatever, I don't know what level of visibility Palo Alto would have into that. Obviously, without giving away, you know, any state secrets there. You know, how are you guys really identifying these threats? Is it through the endpoints as they are phoning back to you to say, hey, I'm catching this in the wild, it needs to be sandboxed?
It's the endpoints and wildfire. So
okay.
Everything that goes through wildfire, and then we also have Cortex XOR, and that we also have visibility into endpoint data that way. So it's a mixture of the two.
Gotcha. And did you fix your technical glitch, or because?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull them right back up now. It actually crashed.
Oh.
Which is a first.
Do you need to call tech support? I mean that. No. So anyway,
No.
There's a 12-year-old on this in his left hand somewhere. With that, the other thing while you're pulling that back up too is just given all the threats that you know you're seeing, and obviously the coalition is identifying and others are, you know, are you guys seeing and can you talk to anything regarding the identification of state-sponsored actors as well?
We're not seeing a ton of that currently. It's still a lot more criminal, but they're definitely leveraging it. I mean, they'd be kind of dumb not to. At this point, for the exact same reason, right? Like it's at the forefront of everyone's mind. And I would imagine from a targeting perspective, if I were their boss, I would be wanting them to look for a lot of the research in healthcare and things like that. So all right, let's give this a try and see if this doesn't crash this time.
All right.
I like how it's only when it's like live and it's something like this that these things actually ever happen.
Yes,
Only
and being
if that's-
recorded.
Like, yes, yes, absolutely.
Right. All right. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
All right, this is the next slide. I just skipped past the problem slide.
All right.
No, wait, not what I wanted to click on. Present. All right.
All right.
So after the bulletproof hosting, I wanted to go into a bit, just some of the examples we've seen with some of the lures. Obviously at this point, honestly, anything I get from anywhere, like if it's a text message, if it's an email and it contains anything related to coronavirus, I'm suspicious at this point, like just automatically, because it's being taken advantage of for everything. So these are some examples. They're obviously not exhaustive. It was just kind of to give you an idea of what some of them are looking like. And they are still using some of the goofy attachments at the end, like, you know, pdf.exe, UUE, like they're still doing a lot of the same things. So and that goes along with what I was saying earlier, where, you know, the attackers didn't get better overnight or suddenly improve. It's the exact same thing. They're just changing out the keywords. So key findings for enterprises. Obviously this has gone up quite a bit with the COVID theming. In some cases, they are definitely targeting more healthcare governmental organizations related to that, but in a lot of ways that also makes sense, because those in a lot are more likely to click in some cases, right? If I'm working at a hospital, I'm getting a lot of this, and it's also something I'm expecting to get a lot of information on a regular basis. It makes it, you know, it looks more legitimate to me. But we have seen the attackers across the board, just COVID everything. For consumers, there's additional concerns, right? So now it isn't just some sort of malware or compromise or losing IP. Now they're preying on people's just fear and distrust currently. It's, you know, it's been quite a while with people questioning news sources and where it's coming from, the accuracy of it. And there's a lot of disinformation that has been out. And that was going on before this started. So people were already concerned. They already weren't necessarily sure what was a reputable source. And now we have a pandemic start, which obviously increases the anxiety. So we saw a massive upsurge in criminals creating fake websites claiming to sell things that were, you know, in low supply, anything cleaning supply, medical related, face masks. Alcohol was the one fun one that actually, of all the keywords of everything that surged over this, alcohol is always a popular keyword. Always. It was the only one that exists like pretty much any other time. It was in this case, it was usually more for like medical grade alcohol, but we thought that was kind of like a funny, like that was sitting up there with all the COVID and everything else.
Well, isn't it legally okay to day drink now? I mean,
They
it's
deliver it to your house. Right? Like,
there you go.
at least they do in some states. They will here. So yeah. And one of the highlights for these to determine maliciousness as well for people can be if this site just popped up. If it doesn't have, you know, if you Google the website and there's nothing, no links, no reviews, you know, in some cases there are reviews, but they end up being copied. So you can see across sites if you start actually doing analysis where they're like just using templates and scripts. But a good sign that whatever website you found promising you this miracle cure is bad is that it's brand new. And there's brand new and it's using bulletproof hosting, then yeah, don't just don't use it. This is an example of one of the malicious Android apps that we found. It was actually using data from the Johns Hopkins tracker. So it was using legitimate data, but what it was doing in the background was stealing all of the PII and contacts and everything and passwords, all of that from the phone, and then sending it back. So at a glance, it might have seemed legitimate because it was actually doing what it was saying it was going to do. But, you know, it was in fact malicious. So these things, just don't download them. Just don't download them right now. I wanted to highlight some of the healthcare targeting that we saw because this is the most egregious, in my opinion, of everything that we saw, because you're going after healthcare during a pandemic. Like, there's a lot of ways you can be a worse person, but this is kind of going to be high on my list, I think, for a long time. So this was a specific example, and it was targeting a number of different hospitals and kind of resource organizations. And to make matters worse, or just to add insult to injury, they were also spoofing the World Health Organization email address. or trying to spoof their email address to add legitimacy to it. The best part of all of this, though, you know, the CVE that was being exploited, because that is one of the most exploited vulnerabilities of like all time. It's always in the top 10, always, 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 always. But you can protect against it, honestly, relatively easily in a lot of cases. So again, I added the Maze ransomware recently because that was kind of it's new both for the attackers who initially claimed they weren't going to go after healthcare, and they're also deploying a new tactic, which we expect to start seeing other actors pick up, which is where it's not just encrypting files, they're stealing data in advance. So if you have a good backup, typically the advice, you know, in these cases has been good backups. If you have good backups, you're fine. You know, you can restore from that. Ransomware won't be that big of an issue for you. But now these attackers have figured that out, and they've taken that option away. Now it's fine if you can restore your files, that's cool, but we've also stolen your data. And if you don't pay us, we're going to publish that publicly and it's going to be lost. So, which is interesting, and I think it's going to presents a unique scenario for defenders now. So now we have this, now you really have to stop them from getting in, period. You can't use that, well, if they get in, we have backups, because once they get in, you're going to be in trouble. And if you really want your data back and not published, you're going to have to pay them. So just to wrap up a bit and kind of highlight some of the malware and things that we were seeing. A lot of the ones, and it's typically ones you see a lot of anyway, NetWire, NanoCore, LokiBot, obviously. Net Support Manager is one I actually kind of want to bring up, because for some reason we've been seeing a lot more of that in the commodity malware space. I'm not entirely certain when it is moving up and it's as being a rat of choice, but we've seen a bit of an uptick in that one being used. Common ransomware, Agent Tesla was the one that we saw quite a bit of. And then the two CVEs primarily that we saw, I always love the 2012-0158. I will remain surprised forever that this is still one of the most exploited vulnerabilities every year.
It's 8 years
And then
old.
it's crazy. Like
It's 8 years old. It's insane.
Yeah, like even if you can't patch at this point for this, I feel like there's so many other options you can do to add to your security to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. But
amazing.
That's me. So tips to stay safe. This is really kind of, I made this overly simplistic on purpose because it's the same sorts of things for the most part you should have done anyway. It's having to learn new behavior patterns because you're doing this from a different location and with more distractions and stress and anxiety and everything surrounding it. But it's the same sort of attacks that were going on previously. The biggest issue here, especially from an enterprise component, is obviously the remote working. All of the people that have shifted to working remotely, and in some cases, I'm so shocked by the stat that Emily mentioned with the number of people allowing employees to use personal devices. But yeah, that is a massive issue if you weren't already set up, at least in some way, with remote working and being able to kind of monitor all your endpoints. So that's something that if you are an organization where that wasn't an area you'd made investments before, there's really no better time than the present. But if you had good kind of setup and visibility previously for that, you were still in a good spot when all this started. We were in a very good spot when all this started. For consumers and just the general public, just be suspicious. Be suspicious of everything that has a COVID theme to it. You know, just take that second to, is this, you know, do I know this person? Does this look like something that they would send me? Maybe you can confirm with them they forwarded you whatever the link was. You can try and, like, for some of the senders, you can Google, there's just a lot of things you can do to look at it and kind of take a breath and think before you click on it to open. Whatever is in there, even if it's real, it's not going to be like, even if they're telling you want $1 million, that extra couple of minutes you take just to make sure that this is actually legitimate, you're still going to get the $1 million. You'll still find out whatever the information is that you needed to find out that was in that email. But taking that kind of pause and making a bit of a sanity check beforehand is really, it'll keep you safe. It really will keep you safe. And this, to another one of Emily's points, from an enterprise perspective, yeah, you really can't, oversell employee awareness and training. So if that is something that wasn't something that you had already at your company, this is definitely the time to start looking to start covering that and filling that in. Your employees are really the ones that, when you have a good program like that, they can let you know that you have a problem before you even do. And finally, when you're looking at all of the emails and the links and the texts and the apps, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. I do have a funny story about this though. So my husband, a couple of weeks ago, we were running low on bleach. And he was talking to one of his buddies. His buddy was like, hey, I found this website. Like, they've got stuff. Like, they've got bleach, they've got masks, they've got everything. It's some sort of like janitorial supply company. So my husband goes on the website and he orders stuff. And I'm immediately like, oh, great. Like, that's not going to be good. I'm going to have to go cancel this credit card, yada, yada. But it wasn't. It turns out I did my due diligence. I did research. I checked out the company, looked at the Better Business Bureau, you know, checked out kind of how long they've been in existence. And it turned out it was a legitimate janitorial supply company that, just because of their pipeline, it had been able to get things in periodically and then offered them for sale. But yeah, so that's just I'd like to use as a story for the one time you think it's too good to be true, but it was legit. You know, just do your research around it. Thank you all. If you have any questions or just want to chat, I would love to. That is our website, our Twitter handle, and then my email address and my Twitter handle.
All right, and we do. And thank Jen, obviously, thank you very much. I'm so glad you made it here and all of that. We do actually have some questions from the audience, and we will start actually with Daniel, who asks, are you seeing an increase in successful C2 since more assets are outside the traditional perimeter now? Also, can you comment on how hackers are targeting remote conferencing tools?
So I don't have a lot of visibility into the targeting of remote conferencing tools. The C2 issue, actually, that's another one where I wouldn't be able to have visibility into it. I suspect that's probably the case, especially for organizations where they're not enforcing some sort of, you know, VPN usage for all of their distributed workforce. But it's a case of I wouldn't be able to see it. So I totally expect that to be the case because of everyone working from home and all of the different policies, you know, and maybe, you know, you dropped the VPN to do something, and there's a number of reasons that you could not see that. But that is definitely an area where I think some organizations, when people start going back into the offices and their devices get joined back up and are once again within the perimeter, they're gonna, I think some Intel teams might be having a busy couple of days or a couple of weeks. Hopefully not, but I unfortunately wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, well, I mean, just anecdotally, we got called into a customer that was basically, they had one of their older conference, like one of those like tri-phone speaker things going on. I can't remember the name of it. It was one of the Polycom ones. And actually it had been converted into a data exfiltration device. You know, so, you know, and they were running everything on, you know, in the same subnet. And I mean, it was a complete and utter hot mess.
When I did red teaming, yeah, those conference rooms.
Yeah. Oh no.
They were and to get passwords and stuff, they were high on the list because no one ever reboots those things.
No, absolutely not. And it's funny too, because when we're doing assessments and we're literally running penetration tests, we're immediately going after printers, IoT, and phones, because it's, you know, password is password, and it's usually hard coded. So, you know, it's interesting. We have some more questions for you though as well, and I think this one is actually for everybody. But you know, Jen, obviously, feel free to go first here. This is from Eileen. She wants to know, is anybody seeing a return of Emotet? I've heard some rumors of updated C2s, but no new campaign yet. And I responded saying, I personally, like, our company has not seen Emotet, but obviously Palo Alto.
Yeah, we haven't seen it in a while either.
Yeah, it's
been
a while.
QuakeBot, CACBot blast from the past has been going on lately that we've definitely seen an uptick in that, which kind of disappeared for a while.
Yeah.
QBot, QBot, no Emotet, which is sad to me because I have very strong Emotet Stockholm syndrome. I love Emotet. It's my favorite malware.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's my #1 favorite malware of all time.
The TLDR of why? I'm so curious.
They've always been really fast to innovate and add new things. They've always been really good at maintaining persistence in a way that was difficult to detect. They always spread very quietly. They're extremely effective at what they do. And like just very, very consistent. Like if I could meet the Emotet like authors, I would be really excited, because yeah, they're the most innovative malware authors I am aware of.
I'm actually getting the sense that Eric might be one of those members. I'm just
No, unfortunately, I would have a much nicer car if
Like your side gig? No.
yeah, if I had that Emotet money, I'd drive something nicer than a Nissan
Right.
Sentra.
Right.
We're all in the wrong industry.
Yes, you're embedded in the coalition to fool us. I know it. All right, at this point. And Eileen says, thanks for the Emotet response, but the longer it takes for a new campaign, the more concerned I get, which,
Yeah.
you know, you never know. They could be innovating right now, and here we
They
are.
probably are.
Right. And Huari asks, what kind of attack are you seeing in WFH? Beside VPN and 2FA, what other measures are good to take? And Jen, do you want to take a crack at that one?
It depends on how you have your work from home kind of set up and your corporate policy, right? So if you're using a work machine and it has endpoint monitoring on it, you're connecting via VPN, those are all your policies. That's obviously really good. If you don't, obviously two factors kind of and everything. One thing you can also do, have a good like kind of router firewall set up at home. I know that's, I mean, people on this call are probably the right people to target with this one, because we all probably mess with our routers. Like, get a good router that has more security and granularity controls on it. And if, depending on how your network is set up, obviously if you're at home, maybe even you have some network segmentation. I know all of my IoT things, they're on like what I consider like the dirty net in my house. They are totally separate from everything else.
Yeah, no,
And then, you know, I have like my work and my personal things are also in a separate kind of more controlled segment.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I'm probably the only one in my block running a PA820 with HP Aruba access points, because nerd. And it's absolutely right. I mean, I have segmentation all over the place. Everything running zero trust and isolation. All my IoT, I actually went through and actually ran the bandwidth calculations on what they would need, and then just basically gave them that for QoS. So if they're ever hijacked, they can't like suck up.
I haven't gone that far, but I mean, I've only got a 220, so.
Yeah, super nerd here, you know, so, but yeah, no, it's great. And the nice part too is I can immediately just drop all the kids' toys and gadgets instantly. So that always makes it fun.
Oh man, a buddy of mine, his boys, two of them are like teenagers and one's like 18. He's been having like so much with this filtering, like, you know, once it's a certain time of night, like no more Facebook, no more this, no more that, like Xbox goes off, and he's been driving his kids insane.
Yeah. No, it's great though. And as a parent, I really, really appreciate that. So there is another question, and this is actually for me, and I was just curious about this, because this is actually something that Emily and her team has been reporting on over the various weeks with the advisories that everybody here should be reading every single week, sometimes twice a week, myself included. I do. Obviously, we are seeing lures shift, because obviously when the bomb dropped and coronavirus hit, and oh my God, the first thing that we saw come out was the WHO guidelines and the fake PDF.exes that, you know, you're talking about, and then other like, here, buy toilet paper from this website and PPE and everything else. But you mentioned something too about shifting into possible conspiracy theories, and I'm just wondering if Unit 42 is seeing stuff around the rash of like, you know, 5G is going to give us coronavirus, and the Bill Gates brain chip, and, you know, like everything else that we're seeing out there. Are you guys tracking lures, you know, in that way as they evolve? And one of the things I know that Emily had talked about in a previous town hall was that, you know, as the United States is starting to mail checks out to everybody, we're going to see a massive amount of phishing, you know, that's going to come out saying, oh, your check was misplaced, click to this government website. And, you know, so what is Unit 42 or Palo Alto seeing on that?
We're not seeing too much of a shift. We are definitely starting to see one. We're seeing a downward, but we're also seeing a bit of a downward trend just in COVID theming in general, right? So not necessarily it evolving, but it becoming somewhat less prevalent. We're starting to see a shift back to a bit of the you know, here's your invoice, here's your package, here's your Amazon order.
Mhm.
You know, obviously there's some things going around with the stimulus checks and taxes still. I mean,
Mhm.
so we're starting to see a bit of, I guess you could call it a return to normal.
Well, normal in all the wrong reasons, for all the wrong
Yeah,
reasons.
exactly.
So,
The normal malicious themes,
Yeah.
the ones they always use.
yes. And the only other question that I can think of is, do you think Unit 42 could hack the Bill Gates brain chip when we all get them? Could you control all of us? Is that?
You're recording this and it's online, so I don't really think I can comment on that.
Well, I can also ask Rapid7 here. You know, so it's all good. And with that, I don't think anybody else has any other questions with that. So Eric, I will turn it back over to you, and thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone who's still on, for being here. If you joined us late, if you didn't join us at all, you can find this recording on YouTube later on. Is that a hash? That's a hash.
It looks,
Somebody dropped-
yeah.
Yeah. Well, now I need to find out what that is.
Emotet. There you go. I was a TrickBot fan, for the record, only because I hated the damn thing. So, but anyway. Please continue.
Hold on. Now I need to look up this hash.
And this is how this recording got extended by like an hour.
That's
yeah,
right.
exactly. We're going to go on a live threat hunt.
Yeah, now we're all going to start. That would be kind of fun, actually.
There you go.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could stream. Oh, it is a new emotet 1 day ago.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh, no, I
Wow.
have to go run it too.
Yeah, we need to do the. Okay, well,
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
copying that right now.
Yeah, Nick, don't close this.
I got it.
Excellent. Where was I?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you joined us on YouTube, you're watching this recorded, where this will be. If you joined us late, you can also watch this there. If you joined us on YouTube, you missed the hash. So if you want that hash, you're going to have to join us on Slack. Reach out to me or somebody else. If you're watching this live and you're not on Slack, then there's a link in the chat and you don't have an excuse. I guess our next goal is 4,500 members, which is a lot, but we're at 4,013. So we've had at least one new member since we started. Yeah, and I will wish you all a wonderful weekend, a wonderful quarantine. Stay safe, stay healthy, and volunteer for the Cyber Threat Coalition.
Please.
In order of importance.
Solid call.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.